I'm Elamin Abdelmahmoud, and this is Commotion. Look, if you're a fan of medical dramas, there's a whole bunch of new shows for you to choose from. There is The Pitt, starring Noah Weil, who you remember, because he's a trauma physician in this one, but you maybe remember him from ER. There's Berlin ER on Apple TV+, and now there's Netflix's first big medical procedural, Pulse.
What the hell?
Cardiac surgery's on their way. Backup generator should be on any second.
Ultrasound's out of battery. They never charge these things. I have to keep going.
Wait. With no ultrasound, she'll be totally blind.
Hey, Gabe, she can do it.
Okay, if you're wondering what's happening there's a lot of drama. A hurricane has just taken out the hospital's power. The brand new chief resident is trying to save the life of her boss's daughter. And her ex, a doctor who she just got suspended for sexually harassing her, is like, yeah, you got this. Believable? No. But like just every other medical drama, Pulse is being billed as gritty and real, which got us wondering, what do real doctors and nurses actually think of medical dramas? Well, Dr. Kwadwo Kyeremanteng is an intensive care doctor in Ottawa, and Amie Archibald Varley is a former ER nurse. She's now a nursing policy advocate, author, and podcast host. Dr. Kwadwo and Amie, welcome to the show, friends. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm happy that you're both here. This is going to be a great time because I've always wondered these questions. Okay, Kwadwo, I'm going to start with you. What do you think of Pulse?
So I didn't hear that this new drama was coming, and I gotta say, this drove me nuts. I was embarrassed. I was told before coming on, I gotta watch this before obviously coming on with you, my friend. And so I was watching it on a plane on the way to a doctor's hockey tournament. So I'm assuming I was sitting next to a doctor, and he's watching this thing, and alongside me, and I could feel his eyes being like, why the heck are you watching this garbage? So I'm like kind of embarrassed. I almost felt like I should say anything, but oh my God, over dramatized. The procedures seemed a bit a little much. They doing IVs on central lines on a beach. Like, sorry if that's a spoiler. Like it was crazy. And the emotion and how much lovey-dovey was happening. I was ready to shut it down, but I had to do my homework. I had to do my role. And so it is what it is.
What I liked about this is that I was going to ask you, what bugged you about this? And then you just gave me 8 things that bugged you about this. Just out the gate. You're like, you would never do these things. That just is never the thing that you would do. Amie, did you have a similar response? Because we should mention, like, Pulse is the first original medical drama that Netflix has ever done. But like, they have Grey's on there. You know, they have House on there. They have New Amsterdam on there. What did you think of Pulse?
Yeah, Pulse was, I guess the medical term is DOA. So I'd say like dead on arrival. It was so bad. And, you know, like sometimes if you have a craft that you're doing really well, so Grey's and all these other shows, they should have just left it. Particularly, I guess we'll talk about this later, in juxtaposition of the other show. Yeah. So yeah, it was just not good. It was melodramatic. I mean, they started the show out with, you know, this whole allegations of sexual misconduct. And I could tell you, like, I've seen how these things happen at workplaces, and we would never be all talking at the nursing station or like, oh my gosh, did you hear about this doctor having, it's like, no, we would never do that. And then just like the bus crash and seeing, like, I've seen what a code orange looks like. And it's like, oh, the worst thing is someone's arm is missing. And I was like, what is happening?
What's
like,
a code? What's a code orange? I don't.
Mass casualty. So like, and you need, it's all hands on deck. And I could tell you, it just was so unrealistic. And like Dr. Kyeremanteng said, the melodrama was over the top. It was really disheartening to see kind of the protagonist, the main character, the female, seemed kind of really out of touch with how female characters tend to be. They made her very weak and very kind of whiny. She really needed a lot of help and support. And I mean, that's not really how I've seen women in leadership in medicine act. So it just kind of fell kind of flat. And it just seemed to me kind of like 50 Shades of Grey meets ER. It was just not great.
Okay, so I'm not in the business of defending TV shows that are bad, and I got to tell you this: I've not yet seen a good review of Pulse. That is not like that. Most of the reviews I've read for the show have been like, "Yikes, this show has several problems." The drama part, that's their job, right? Their job is to sort of like dramatize a workplace setting, and there's something attractive about, you know, a medical procedural, because it allows all the inherent drama of the medical world to just kind of come out. So Kwadwo, the story that Amie is describing there is just a bit of a spoiler here. Is that the opening scene shows us a school bus driving off a bridge, sinking into the water below, and then when the patients come in, they don't seem to be suffering from any injuries connected with having been submerged in water, and they're not actually like even damp at all, which is very funny here. Was there anything? I guess when a show positions itself as like it's gritty and it's realistic, you kind of are primed to look for those things. Was there anything realistic about the show, Kwadwo?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I liked about it was for example, the diagnoses for the most part weren't out of left field. Like they made sense in terms of they're treating XYZ diagnoses or medical problems. So I'll give them that. And I like the effort in terms of trying to get youth inspired by medicine. Like I think we, as a healthcare professional that saw, and Amie could probably attest to this, we did have a reasonable exodus of staff, especially post pandemic. So anything that's going to maybe draw people in, I think that effort I could appreciate. But man, you could do this a lot better without being over the top. And because our world, like, let's be honest with it. Like, if you spent a day in the ER, a day in the ICU, we don't need to over dramatize this. There's a lot of action that's happening that will draw you. Yeah. And so I think, you know, if you put a little bit of a realistic slant on things, not come as much over the top, you can start winning. But this was, oh my God, it was DOA, as my fellow guest has mentioned.
Yeah, I think there's something about the reaction that the show is inviting that has been particularly comical, because we've seen this glut of medical dramas recently, and medical dramas kind of like go in and out of fashion, and we seem to be particularly in a season of getting a bunch of them. I'll get to The Pitt in a moment, but maybe Amie, I want to play you a moment from the second episode of Pulse. This is where the chief resident takes the intern aside. Let's listen.
Look, don't tell anybody, but I need you to find a room, enough space for a dozen beds, somewhere that the staff can sleep.
Couldn't we just sleep in the on-call rooms with the bunk beds?
Did you watch a lot of Grey's Anatomy growing up?
Yeah.
Okay. Try to unlearn that.
Well, Amie, it's a medical drama referencing a medical drama that is currently still on air, by the way. That line is interesting because some critics are kind of already likening Pulse to Grey's Anatomy, and yet this show is trying to be like, no, listen, Grey's is totally unrealistic. We deal with the real world around here. As someone who has worked as a nurse in the ER, why does realism matter in these shows? Why should we think about realism in these shows?
Yeah, just to quickly mention that, you know, like Pulse is on season 1, Grey's is on season 22, right? like I didn't even know if Pulse is going to make it to season 2. Yeah. But just like what you said, like the realism is important. I think one of the things that folks want to see, particularly when they're watching medical dramas, it's like the safety of your own home to examine like what's happening in the medical world, right? Yeah. I kind of liken it to a horror movie. You get to watch from the comfort of your own home and know that, you know, these things might not happen to you, but it kind of gives you this insider's view. So I think that, you know, we can suspend our disbelief, but I think when it comes to the fact, particularly for medical dramas, I think viewers can tell when it's like, yeah, that's most likely never something that would happen. And again, I think, you know, Pulse just does a really poor job of, you know, putting that realism in it. And it becomes more of a medical, like a drama versus a medical drama, because they're more focusing the stories on the actual characters themselves versus what's coming into the emergency department, which is where I kind of think it fell flat. But again, like, I think that, you know, people want to be able to, you know, examine what happens in the ER or wherever from the comfort of their own homes. And it's kind of like a little bit of learning, and you can't learn if you're watching something where you're going, yeah, that would never happen. Well,
also, like, I guess just on a very basic level, when you keep upping the stakes, you eventually have to like take it out of the work that they're doing and sort of immerse yourself in the absurdity of the world around them. I think like one of the reactions to, recently Grey's Anatomy it was announced it was going to be renewed for season 22. Right. And when that announcement announcement came out, someone was like, someone needs to blow up that hospital. And very earnestly, Grey's fans were like, they blew up the hospital in seasons 2 and season 7 and season 9 and season 14. Like there's eventually you have nowhere to go. Eventually, like you kind of have to keep ratcheting up the stakes here. But Kwadwo, we've kind of alluded to the other show that is in the big conversation of the moment, right? Which is The Pitt, because The Pitt, medical drama from HBO Max, but also at the same time, it takes on a different approach. The Pitt is a 15-hour shift in a single day. Each episode is a single hour in that shift. What does The Pitt get right that Pulse get wrong, you think, Kwadwo?
Just the whole realism, like it's a much more realistic slant on healthcare. Like when you when they walk into that waiting room, that feels real. That feels authentic to me. It feels like what I've seen in our hospital. That a level of overwhelm, the amount of tension, the anxiety that's in the room. So that they did well. Number two, once again, the diagnosis and the patient states that come in. Yes, it's a little bit faster than in real world, but like you got to have a little bit of a lens where they got to make it entertaining. They got to fit things within an hour or 45 minutes. So, to me, I'm forgiving from that perspective. And then procedurally too, like I was really impressed. Like when they're doing the ultrasounds, where they're doing the intubations.
A lot of intubations in The Pitt. Everybody gets intubated in The Pitt.
Yeah, everyone. Yeah. That's true. Actually, there's a lot of patients need to be intubated.
Yeah,
and just to say the power of this, like I grew up on ER, and I would be remiss I'd be lying to say that didn't influence me in terms of wanting to go into a medical field that was high paced. Like I think if you do this well, it could be really motivational. And so I honestly, I think they do a lot of things well, including the interpersonal side of things. Like there's a couple of cheesy characters that I think are over the top, but the idea that they're more, slightly more relatable than I would say that I'm seeing on the Pulse is also another plus in that direction.
Yeah, Amie, if I watch The Pitt, I guess everybody gets intubated when they go to the ER. That's presumably the first thing that happens, and then they figure out what else is wrong with you, because I feel like every character does. But having said that, The Pitt got a lot of praise for dealing with the drama of the stuff that is in front of you, the anxiety of the setting, the already high stakes of the setting. They don't need the ultrasound machine to run out of battery. You know what I mean? Like that's not important in this particular case to keep kind of up in the stakes. What about The Pitt made it feel more realistic for you, Amie?
Yeah, I think The Pitt is what I would say is what's gritty, right? I think one of the things that I noticed between the two is it showed that healthcare is not sexy. Like if you watch the Pulse, everyone's beautiful. Everyone's got great hair and great teeth. Everyone's so well put together. And in The Pitt, you can see these people feel real. They feel like someone that you've probably worked with. Like I can identify with every single one of the characters. Even they talk even about like, the security. They have everybody, because everybody has a role to play. So I really felt connected with some of the characters and said, oh my gosh, yeah, I've had that experience happen to me. And it just feels much more realistic. I felt that the characters were relatable. I also felt that some of the stories were really nuanced. They were talking about conversations that we haven't really had in medicine and healthcare. So talking about, sickle cell and racism within healthcare. They talked about, the dynamics of a child who has had a fentanyl overdose. We're talking about real things. And I found that was so important and well needed, because people have questions. And I think that even though it might be just starting the preliminary conversation, it's a conversation that's worth having. So I really enjoy watching The Pitt. And I love watching that one reticent every hour have to change his scrubs. I think it's hilarious.
That's hilarious. Can I add one other thing that was amazing to me? Like I've worked in the world of organ donation, and it's one of the things that I think people don't understand how meaningful and impactful that can be for society and even for a situation where there's been such a dramatic loss that you can now contribute. And I won't lie, I got a little emotional during that part where, sorry if it's a spoiler alert for folks, but that whole donation sequence of getting the family to understand what could it mean to patients. And then as he's getting wheeled out to leave the hospital, and I forget, Amy, what's it where all the staff are in a row, and what's it called
I can't
again?
remember the name, but it's like this congratulatory kind of like celebration of life because they're donating and they're now giving someone else the opportunity to live.
Yeah, like up to 8 people, you know, it could be their lives could be saved from a donor, and so like seeing that magic and seeing how that message could, I know it's going to sit well with somebody and it's going to affect people's lives. And to me, what an impact of a medical drama where what your message is, the message that you're giving off is going to impact people's lives, just like the fentanyl stuff. Like we've seen that as well, where people don't know it's laced with things, and it's horse tranquilizer dosing of fentanyl, the synthetic fentanyl, where they're not even making it to hospital because it's so potent and the antidote is not working. And so that message out there, especially to our youth, if they're catching it, like, or the parents are catching it, is significant.
I'm getting the sense from both of you that the medical dramas have a lot of potential, right? Which is to say that we really could change how people interact with the medical world. Kwadwo, for you, it sounds like you watch ER and you're like, let's go do that. That sounds great. I'm on board with this. And so literally they could be a recruiting tool. And that's not lost on me. But then you kind of get the highs of the Pitt. And I think the thing that makes the Pitt work is that it is that contained 15-hour shift, which is to say it could just be a bad day in these people's lives. Like that's really what we're looking at versus the lows of Pulse, which is like, why do these people's lives kind of look like this? So now as people who know a lot about this field, you each get an opportunity and a chance to create your own medical drama. Pitch me on what you would create. Amie, I'll start with you.
Oh my goodness. Well, I have to go with my previous love, which is labor and delivery. I think we have not seen a show where we talk labor and delivery is everywhere. You see laboring patients in the ED, you see them in the ICU, you can see them on med-surg. So I would pitch a pilot for, you know, maybe it's a gritty nurse who has some trauma that has to be dealt with. And, you know, surrounding that trauma, she has to deal with all the intricacies of it being a labor and delivery nurse. And, you know, again, we deal with not just one patient, but 2.
Wow.
The mom and the baby.
Wow.
The like the readiness with I'm ready to greenlight this thing and be like, okay, let's go. Because I'd not thought about that particular arena. You're right. We don't see an entire show that is entirely focused on that setting. I'm trying to think of, I keep thinking about different shows that have an episode here and there that drop into that world, but not the entire show built around that. So I'm on board, Amie. I'm in, but that means Kwadwo, you got to compete with that. So what pitch would you like to offer?
Number 1, I would watch that show. Number 2, I feel like there was a version on TLC, maybe something like that. But yeah, I would definitely watch the show. That was
very flowery. This would be like very gritty.
Real.
Oh, it's gritty. It's gritty, but not gritty like Pulse. It's gritty like the Pitt. It's the real gritty. Yes.
The real gritty.
Yeah.
So initially, I was thinking about my other jobs in palliative care, where it's really, you see people at the end of their life, and the connection and the joy that that clinicians get is that you get to really form a connection and learn about that patient and their life and so forth. But I think I'm switching to my house, like in the ICU. We get everything. We literally get everything. You get the resuscitations that you see on the Pitt. You get the family dynamics. You get the staff dynamics. You get the end of life care. We talked about the organ donation stuff. Like, I think we would not be short of things to talk about, and there's a lot of angles where we could go. And so like no one knew people don't know what an intensivist is really until the pandemic hit. People don't really know what the job is like, but I think there's a little bit more interest since we were highlighting some of the work that we were doing over the last few years. But that's my a little bit biased opinion on where we could go.
No, listen. One, I'm on board with that, and two, it's like the ICU is a mystery box because like it's one thing to set a medical show in an emergency room. People have been to emergency rooms. Not everyone has been to an intensive care unit, and so there's and I don't want to. I don't want to go, Kwadwo. So like, please make a show about it so that I don't have to actually go visit it. I was under the impression that by the end of this conversation, I would have to be intubated. So I'm grateful that I'm not, but I'm grateful for your time also. Thank you for being on the show. This has been wonderful. Thanks, y'all. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much. Dr. Kwadwo Kyeremanteng is an intensive care doctor in Ottawa, and Amie Archibald Varley is a former ER nurse. She's now a nursing policy advocate, author, and podcast host. She's in Hamilton. Pulse is streaming now on Netflix, if you must, and The Pitt is on Crave. You can watch that now as well.